Hey guys, back at it again with your very own. Today we're back on the Tao Te Ching, same book as before. We're going into the origin of the Tao and the introduction. The story of Lao Tzu at the past is both memorable and useful for clearing up a number of points about the Tao and Taoism. Perhaps the most common misconception encountered by Westerners is that Lao Tzu himself was the founder of Taoism, which he was not. By the time Lao Tzu walked the earth 2,500 years ago, the concept of the Tao had already been an integral part of Chinese culture for thousands of years. As the story puts it, Lao Tzu was looking to get away, not found a movement, by writing the Tao Te Ching. He was simply honoring a request to him to pass on the learning and the knowledge of those who had preceded him. The Tao Te Ching itself contains references to ancient masters or masters of antiquity, terms referring not to Lao Tzu's contemporaries as we may first assume, but rather to people who were as ancient to him as he is to us. To such ancient masters were Huangti, Pinyin Huangdi, and Fuxi, or Pinyin pronounced Fuxi. They were among the earliest rulers of China who lived more than 4,700 years ago. It's a long time. At least 2,200 years ago before Lao Tzu. Huangti has always been closely associated with the early form of Taoism, and Fuxi was the originator of the yin-yang concept. Furthermore, it is interesting to note that Lao Tzu did not intend to write an expression of original ideas. Instead, he summarized existing ideas and teachings to create an overview of prevailing concepts. We know from Chinese oral tradition that one of Lao Tzu's primary sources was the library of King Wu. Although this library had an impressive collection, it still did not possess every notable book known to ancients at the time. After all, King Wu was not the emperor of China, but only one of many lords vying for the title. Therefore, Lao Tzu's overview was almost comprehensive, but not quite. In times, other sages of ancient China understood what Lao Tzu was trying to accomplish, and over the next 7 centuries they added to his work wherever they noticed gaps. This gave rise to the historically verifiable fact that multiple early versions of the Tao Te Ching existed. Each was a work in progress as the sages who came after Lao Tzu changed a few words and shifted the order of the chapters. This process continued until about 1800 years ago, when noted scholar Wang Bi consolidated the mirrored editing changes and finalized the compilation. These multiple versions of the Tao Te Ching had led some modern-day scholars to theorize that perhaps Lao Tzu is a composite of multiple individuals and never existed as a single historical figure. So they're saying that he might not have been an actual figure in history that actually existed. He may have been a comprised concept of individuals combined. Lao Tzu had created something so accessible that subsequent philosophers built on it and developed what we now know as philosophical Taoism, characterized by secular observation of the natural laws governing existence. At the same time, spiritual seekers built on it in a different way to create religious Taoism, marked by doctrines, rituals, and pantheon of deities. Lao Tzu can be properly credited as one who started these two parallel threads that became mainstays of Chinese culture. At the same time, the original form of Taoism that inspired him should also be recognized as a true source. The incredibly ancient history of the Tao means that we can use his Tao Te Ching as a gateway to the distant past. When we study and practice it, we're not bringing these words to life in our present circumstances. We're also leveraging Lao Tzu's words from 2,500 years ago to vault further back in time. Through Lao Tzu, we're extending our reach all the way to antiquity and connecting with the essence of Chinese spirit since time immemorial. Interfaith approach. One reason Taoism has such durability, paradoxically, is because of its flexible and inclusive nature. Upon hearing it for the first time, many people assume the word Tao to be a specialized term for specific Taoism. In Chinese culture, however, it has always been a generic term applicable to every aspect of life, including every conceivable religion, because every belief system has its own particular way. The ancient Chinese sages who originated the term were perhaps the first practitioners of the interfaith approach to spirituality following their lead. Chinese people throughout history have applied the term, so that meant the Chinese people who originated the term were perhaps the first practitioners of the interfaith approach to spirituality. So the first people to actually practice a religion day by day to actually eventually test it spiritually. Chinese people throughout history have applied the term to every school of thought in every discipline, including martial arts. So they even included martial arts in high school. The original conception of the Tao was simply the observation that reality has a certain way about it. The way encompasses all of existence, all of existence, life, the universe, and everything. A Christian may call it God's will, an atheist may call it the laws of nature. These are labels pointing to the same thing, and the Tao is simply the most generalized label imaginable, applicable to both perspectives. Continued introduction. Because of the Tao's inclusive nature, when Buddhism entered China 1,800 years ago, it found easy acceptance despite its difference from Taoism. A sense of optimism and humor runs through the ancient Tao. Atli expresses carefree wandering. Buddhism, on the other hand, saw life as kuhai, the bitter ocean, and focused on suffering. Despite this, Chinese people regarded Buddhist teachings as simply another way to express the Tao, thus setting the stage for religious Taoism and Buddhism to interact and influence one another. Understanding such as the way of the water, be like water, Bruce Lee, as they said. Because he's Buddhist, and that's a Taoist saying. So that's a Taoist saying. I think it's in chapter 46 or something like that. No, it's chapter 8. I think it is chapter 7 or chapter 8, where there's a statement on water. Be like water. It was only natural that a fusion of Indian and Chinese thought would give rise to Zen Buddhism. This inclusive and unifying aspect of the Tao is something that is still not well understood in the West, and can lead to confusion about the similarities and differences between Taoism and Buddhism. About the similarities and differences between Taoism and Buddhism, it can also lead to an express by some Western authors that Taoism is opposed to another prominent Chinese tradition, Confucianism, which is contrasted to Taoism as a philosophical frame on the interrelated functions of the individual and society, almost entirely devoid of spiritual commentary. So there's no spirituality in Confucianism. That's why it's considered the opposition. Completely logical, based on logic. While this confrontational model may be easy to grasp with a perspective that sees life in terms of battling forces, it is definitely not how ancient sages viewed the Tao. To them, the Tao was a paradigm that encompassed everything. Although religious Taoism did compete against Confucianism for the official designation as a philosophical basis of the empire, Chinese people throughout the centuries have been very comfortable subscribing to both camps, seeing them as complementary to one another, each useful in its own ways. In the West, the Tao has veered away from its generic roots and taken on an aura of exotic mystique. Those of us who cling to the misconception may be surprised to encounter Asians who casually speak of the Tao of Jesus or the Tao of science. On the other hand, if we can connect with the original meaning, we see that the Tao is truly for everyone, regardless of religion or of religious orientation or lack thereof. Furthermore, understanding the Tao helps remove us from the frame of mind that demands strict dualistic either or categories. To a mind that works in dualism, the question, do you believe in God, may be perfectly sensible. Yet from all the encompassing Taoist point of view, ask, do you believe in the Taoism? In the Tao? Makes as much sense as, do you believe in your height? Everyone has a certain height. This is something not subject to belief or disbelief. Similarly, everyone has a particular view, a unique individual outlook on life, and there is nothing we can do to affirm or deny it. Therefore, no one has to abandon or compromise his or her faith in order to believe in the Tao. Your Tao has always been and will always be a part of you. In this all-inclusive sense, every one of us is already on the path of some sort. We are all some sorts of travelers to the Tao. Those of us who become aware of this and actively seek further understanding by studying the ancient Chinese sages are part of a more specialized group. We are not necessarily Taoists in the religious sense, but we cultivate the Tao in our lives, so the term Tao cultivator can be an appropriate designation. Membership in this group requires nothing more than active interest in the Tao. By picking up this book, you already made yourself a part of this time-honored tradition. One characteristic of the Tao cultivators is the understanding that Tao does not have to be personified. It is the ultimate principle and is not It is the ultimate principle, not a supernatural being with human traits. Therefore, using a flame, a manifestation of energy, to represent it is better than using a painting or a sculpture of some human likeness. This is why Mu light is on the cover of this book. Mu is a reference to the nurturing nature of the Tao. Light represents divinity. The inscription behind the flame reads Wu Ji, meaning without boundaries, and referring to the infinity of existence when lit. The Mu light casts its shadow through the inscription, symbolizing the way reality reflects the patterns of the great Tao. That's the end of Well, we have more pages of the this introduction, but I'll save it for next video. All right, peace, guys. See you.